is October 8th, 2021. This is the Daily Rob, and we are here with the man, the myth, the legend, the child of prophecy, Rob Smith.
Well, you must have read the lost book of the Bible, the book of Rob. Yes. Well, thank you, Stu.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. You're gonna ask me why I'm so spiffy looking this morning? 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm ready to go.
I'm guessing you pulled an all-nighter and you are all dressed up from the night before.
That is a good thought, Stu, and based on much historical empirical evidence. But no, Stu, I got a little court action this morning where I plan to bedazzle them with my golden tongue. Some ignoratio juris non excusat, some res ipsa loquata, some sui juris, some pro hac vici.
There you go.
I have them eating out of my hands.
I dig it. I like it. Bring out that Atticus Finch card.
There you go, Stu.
So what stories are you keeping an eye on today?
Well, Stu, it's been a long time since we have bestowed the Brass Testicle Award on someone. And I think it's about time we do that.
Okay.
Ironically, the Brass Testicle Award this morning is going to someone who does not have any natural testicles. You might say, oh, is it an LGBT person? You might say that, Stu.
I might.
Okay. But no, it's not. It is a binary person. It is a woman. Do you know who it's going to go to, Stu?
I haven't.
What woman has the most balls that you know of, or in the popular eye?
Does she have beach ball sized lady nuts?
You got those beach ball sized lady nuts, and I want to harness the heat coming off of them.
So who gets this award?
Marjorie Taylor Greene. And you know, a lot of country club Republicans don't like her because I think she ended a sentence with a preposition once. They're like, ooh, she's not our type. But she was responding to Mitch McConnell's alleged cave-in on the debt balance bill. And here's what she said. It's the systematic failures of the Republican establishment who constantly compromise with the Hate America Communist Democrat Party that have led us to where we are now. Go, Marjorie. Oh, before I go any further, I had planned to flash in front of the camera some brass testicles. My friend Terrell Bowers, sick individual that he is, whenever he comes up here from Charleston, he always goes by south of the border and he brings me a novelty gift. And I had some brass testicles keychain thing. I couldn't find them still. But I did find some plastic dog dick.
Okay.
Anyway, she also said, Mitch McConnell, the Republican leader in the Senate, needs to stop holding hands with Schumer, who hates Republicans and wants to round us up with the politically weaponized DOJ and FBI.
She's not wrong.
Yes.
I'm not the biggest fan of hers. And, you know, whenever I see
is she not the babe that you would like for her to be? Is that why you don't like her?
I feel like time has yet to tell about her. You know,
Okay.
a lot of these politicians get really great sound bites, but then I feel like they're at the end of the day, they're really not for us, you know. And I will say, you know, the time with her has been short compared to other people. But, you know, when I think of someone like Jim Jordan, he gets a lot of good sound bites, but I feel like he's not as good of a fighter as I would like him to be.
Done so far. Let me ask you.
No,
Jim
very true.
Sensenbrenner's taken money from Google. Google is your second biggest campaign contributor in the last cycle. Why do you think they would give you money? And why would you take it?
If they want to exercise their First Amendment liberties and give me money, I raised $3 million last quarter. If Google gives me a few $1,000 check, God bless them. That doesn't change who I am. You saw that today in the committee. I went after him for the very issue you just raised, Tucker. In 2016, Google tried to tailor their features to help Clinton in key states. That's directly from the email, the head of their multicultural marketing section.
Oh, I get it. I mean, again, I'm a talk show host. We talk about this stuff all the time, but where's the part where we say we're yanking your liability exemption, the one that we don't have at Fox News, but they somehow have?
I hear it. It's more than just what you say in front of the camera is what you're saying, Stu.
Yeah, and I would say
you're a steak over sizzle man.
Yes. I'd rather have someone like a Thomas Massey who gets into the nitty gritty of the details and might not have as much sizzle. But so that's just me. But we'll see. I mean,
are you having a bromance with Thomas Massey? Because you like him a lot.
Thomas Massey is the only person outside of Rand Paul and Ro Khanna that I even like in Congress. So
Okay.
I have a list of three people. Three people.
Well, there are not many up there who are worthy of your admiration and adoration, Stu.
Yeah.
They should be wooing you. You
Well,
got 3 million followers.
It's that Chesterton quote where, GK said all people who should be politicians are too busy raising families and working and don't even think of getting involved with politics. So there is that aspect of it.
Yeah, I would agree with that entirely.
Yeah.
I remember my second day or first day of law school, there was an orientation and two guys came up to me and they were like, "Hey buddy, how you doing?" Slapping me on the back. And you could just tell they were just these sleazy weasels who were one day going to run for office.
Mm.
And my antennae was right.
Yeah.
So anyway, she said some more things and she capped it off with, "For your information, Mitch, anything you do that helps the America and Israel hating progressives get their way betrays our country and our allies. Republican leaders should not be providing aid and comfort to the likes of Omar, Jayapal, and AOC." She's got testicles, and I'll be mailing her as soon as Terrell comes back up with some more brass testicles, I will be mailing them to her, Stu.
You could always get some nice truck nuts and mount those on a nice little wooden stand for her.
That would be nice. On the radio today, I heard about Terry McAuliffe. He's running for governor of Virginia. And of course, we know, we've already talked about this thing he said at the debate with Glenn Youngkin, where he said that parents shouldn't have any involvement in their children's school. He's not going to allow that. It's just such an unbelievable thing to say. But what makes it even more ingenuous and slimy is he's got 4 children and he has sent them all to a very prestigious private school, the Potomac School. It costs $30,000 a kid, and I'm all for it, if he wants to send his kid to private schools. But the chutzpah of being able to say something like he did with his background, with his children, you just wonder what goes on in these people's head. What makes them think that children belong to the government? It's just an observation, Stu. It's just shocking to me. The other kind of local news is the Democratic Party of Virginia has asked Governor Northam if they would waive the signature requirements for absentee ballots because of the COVID crisis. Now, Stu, what reason in the world would you waive the signature? If you're going to mail the ballot in, why can't you sign it? There's only one reason, and that's to cheat. And it's so transparent And lastly, Stu, there's some more COVID stuff out there about a Department of Defense study that was done. They analyzed 5.6 million COVID vaccine people. And they say after 5 or 6 months, the vaccine really, starts to wane away. But it seems as though when it does wane away, those people are more likely to get COVID than those who have never had the vaccine. In Jerusalem, the hospital there, 95% of the inpatients have had the vaccine. So it works at first, but then after 5 or 6 months, apparently this study, and I haven't read the whole thing yet, says that you're more likely to get the COVID when it starts to wear off. So there. All right, Stu, what do you got, son?
So I have been following this Facebook whistleblower, and I have to.
I only saw her from here up. Was she a babe? I mean, is she fairly attractive? Have you seen her whole body?
For me,
because I'm so superficial, I can't make a judgment on her till I see the whole thing. Is that fair?
For you, that's fair. For me, I have other metrics, but I've never seen anyone who has been a whistleblower so immediately loved by the establishment. So let's go through list of whistleblowers. Chelsea Manning, tortured in jail. Julian Assange, harassed, tortured, and just driven to the brink of sanity in jail. Edward Snowden, abroad. And Seth Rich, murdered. Unproven murdered. Conspiracy land.
Alleged to have been assassinated.
Yes.
Because, there are a lot of assassinators. Is that right?
Assassins?
Yes, assassins in Clover Park, just walking around Washington. You really have to watch it. Assassinators, yes.
But, and to be fair, his family denies all of that, whatever. But she was immediately verified on various social media sites. She has her own Wikipedia now, and it just feels orchestrated. Now, Murray Rothbard had the great quote of, "You always want to see where someone has been, where they are currently, and where they're going." And so for me, my brain just kind of flares up. This is a CIA plant of some sort. And I know that's major conspiracy land, but she did have the Harvard education. She worked at Google, and we do know for a fact that there was some CIA funding that went into Google. So I have no idea what to really make of her, but it just feels fake. It feels orchestrated. And then the mission is that they are going to regulate Facebook. So
there you go, Stu. You've
and
gotten to the golden nugget here. And I don't know whether I'll go along with you on the CIA thing, but I think it very easily could be a play between progressive forces and Facebook. Because when you say where she's been, she led the team at Facebook, which deleted all references to Hunter Biden's laptop. You remember before the election?
Yeah.
So that if you or I or anybody in America posted something about that, which was all true and was in the New York Times, it's all been proven true. She deleted it. She also has given to the Democratic Party 37 times since 2016. Gee, could there be an agenda here? So these people are duplicitous, and And they do things like this. It's just like planning the FBI agents in the January 6th protest to stir up controversy. They are experts at creating a false flag of some sort. So I think she very easily could be a plant such that we could have government regulation of speech.
And so the fascinating thing about all of this is we also experienced the major outage on Facebook this week as well. And now you're having calls that Facebook's moderation team is essentially the equivalent to child labor. And it's too much of an orchestrated attack on Facebook and Zuckerberg. And I don't think Zuckerberg is a perfect person. I think he is essentially out of his depth now. He didn't sign up for this to be such a hot button issue of the First Amendment when he designed this. He just wanted to make a tech apparatus, and now he's drawn into it. And I think all those Silicon Valley tech people are gross, but at the same time, I have sympathy for the fact that they never signed up for this to be a part of their life, in the sense that we are highly debating, well, what is the role of this in our society now? For me, I think all of it should just be abandoned as something that does not work for our still primitive brains to a certain degree.
I hereby denounce the effects that social media have on my children, their disobedience and their disrespect. Charlie! Set her up. I refuse to be disobeyed. I take back my role as your parent. Get a shot of them. All right?
So that's kind of my thoughts on that, but it stinks to high heaven this whole week concerning all of this. And I understand, and if I'm being the devil's advocate right now, I can understand why something like Twitter would immediately want to verify her, blue check her, and prop her up, because she's essentially crapping on their competition. But at the same time, it feels too orchestrated. And
yeah, it's not organic. I would agree with you there.
Yeah.
I believe that this could be a staged effort, and that she's basically a prompt in order to gain government regulation of speech. Those are the tactics the left uses, and I think there's plenty of evidence to suggest that that might be true.
I love the kind of 180 that this is all taken. You know, this discussion was major throughout the Trump years of should we regulate big tech and the free speech aspect of it. And now that they're entrenched in power, of course we want to regulate big tech. So it just is disgusting to me. The other story I'm following kind of builds upon our kind of conflict of interest tidbits of yesterday. So Merrick Garland, believe it or not, has a son-in-law who is affiliated with Panorama Education, which essentially provides software for CRT education. So now Merrick Garland is coming down on those that defy that, and it feels like a conflict of interest. And it just is one of those things where why can't we see conflict of interest that lift everybody up instead of polarize people? But it's just not the case. And so here in Virginia, it's an open secret that the richest member of Congress, Mark Warner, he got all of his money because he essentially knew all the legislation that was going to be coming down the pipeline and got his money that way. And I know you are very knowledgeable about that, Uncle Rob. Could you speak to that?
He was buried inside the government bureaucracy. He, went to Harvard, gets a job in the government, and he got exposed to the telecom industry, and he was able to buy licenses for like Verizon and places like that before the technology was very robust. And he got it because he was an insider, and that's how he made all of his money. Again, in the swamp. Can't say that he ever really produced anything, created anything. He bought a license that nobody else knew about.
Yeah.
Any other entity, in law firms and banks and places like that, it's the first thing folks check. But in Washington, there are no checks and balances, but the media never calls you on it. And the Republicans, Jeff Sessions he recused himself, and he shouldn't have, merely because he had said hello to the Russian ambassador, who walks down the halls of Congress and goes to all kinds of parties and cocktail parties and things in Washington, where you see him all the time. But they ask him, hey, have you ever talked to the Russian ambassador? Well, everybody's talked to the Russian ambassador. Well, you must excuse yourself from any investigation into Donald Trump. And that's what they did to him. And the Republicans folded on a fake issue like that, but they don't do anything on an issue like this.
I mean, it's the same thing that we saw at the beginning of COVID, when you had multiple congressmen unload a ton of stocks and there was no accountability for it. Then they pressured W. Bush to get rid of his interest in the Texas Rangers. They, just harassed the Trump family about their business holdings and their interests. And it's pussyfied how there is this no attack on all of this, because it's the George Carlin quote.
It's a big club, and you ain't in it.
We're not in the club with them. And so it's perfectly fine that we know what's going on, but they protect themselves.
And they exempt themselves from everything. They're exempted from having to get a vaccine. But this is why I'm going to run for president under the banner of the Deconstructionist Party, because you'll never stop corruption, because man is, there's the duality of man. And, you got the pitchfork guy over here and the angel guy over here, and your conscience, your inner soul has to choose which side you're on. And so there's always going to be corruption. But what makes corruption in capital letters is all the money they have at their disposal. So much money flows into Washington. Why? Because they extract that money from you at the point of a bayonet. Oh, Big Rob, you shouldn't say such inflammatory things. The point of a bayonet. Well, if you don't pay your taxes, you go to jail. And if you don't want to go to jail and want to resist police, they will shoot you. Okay? But Washington has all this money flowing in there that they have not produced, and they've got their grubby little hands in there. And the only way to stop corruption is to cut the money off.
Who got all the contracts to do all the building projects in Iraq? Well, Joe Biden's brother.
I mean, yeah, exactly. Hugh Rodham got the Haitian contract to rebuild that. He's,
another great example.
I mean, it's just unbelievable. I mean, there's no ethics. I mean, guys like you and me, we wouldn't want to be seen in public if we did something like that.
And to be fair, if someone who's lefty is watching this, it happens on both sides, and that's why it's a big club that we aren't in. And that's why I only have 3 people in Congress that I admire. So.
Well, you might have 3 more than I do, but
okay, that's fair. Well, let's end on a happy note. What's your words of wisdom for today?
Well, Stu, I was thinking we could have a quote from Teddy Roosevelt again, Robert E. Lee, or the famous British parliamentarian Edmund Burke.
Well, considering who I'm repping right now, let's see.
Who are you repping? Let's see.
TR
What's it
himself. Teddy.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think this is a great quote, and it's relevant today. And I know you've heard this, but it is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, like you are, Stu. You're in the arena today, telling the world how you think, ready to fight for your principles, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood. That's you, Stu. Who strives valiantly. That's you too. Who errs. I don't know, Stu. I've never heard you really err, but anyway. Who comes short again and again because there is no effort without error and shortcoming. But who does actually strive to do the deeds? Who knows great enthusiasms? You know that because you have such a huge fan base. Okay. The great devotions. Who spends himself in a worthy cause. Who at best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah!
The great fundamental issue now before our people can be stated briefly. It is, are the American people fit to govern themselves, to rule themselves, to control themselves? I believe they are. My opponents do not.